Welcome. What's up, YouTube? It's Jay here. Today, we are back with another episode of the Modcast podcast. The last one was probably like 2 years ago because I'm absolutely atrocious at being consistent with my podcast episodes, so forgive me. But today, we've got Corey, Jeroen, Z3R0X, and we're going to be talking a whole lot about Empire War stuff, mostly the history, I guess you could say, of Empire War. I'm kind of just gonna be letting them have the floor and discuss things, and then I'll just kind of jump in between for the most part. Everybody has a bit of a tight schedule today, so we're only gonna be running for probably like an hour or so, if that works for you guys. I assume that works for everybody here.
Yep.
An hour.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that should be fine.
That's
Cool. All right, cool. Yeah, and Jeroen is the EU guy that is all the way in the other part of the world right now, so it's like nighttime for him, so we're just trying to keep things relatively simple. So, without further ado, guys, how we doing? Who wants to go first? Who wants to say something? How are y'all doing?
I'm doing good. No complaints. Like I joked with Geronimo a little bit. I'm sorry, Jeroen. All right, now.
Jeroen, you American pleb. Nah, it's okay. No one can pronounce that. Jeroen is fine. Dutch is too.
I am old enough, and I've been around long enough to know both these guys, their original online handles versus their new ones. So,
Oh boy.
But anyway, I'm doing great, man. Jay, you know that I just jumped back into this after a 10-year hiatus.
Yeah, man.
It's been a interesting journey, to say the least. I felt like someone that was asleep and like woke up and like some new futuristic, like it's just been weird, right? Because I come from the MSN Messenger era, and all of a sudden there's Discord and there's GitLab and there's all this stuff that I never had any like inkling would even exist.
He's like the walking deaf.
2013 is 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, how do you think?
That was 10 years ago. Wow.
And you guys are significantly younger than me, so how do you think I feel?
I think I'm the age now that you would have been back when Empire War released-ish. Probably a little bit older than you were.
God
Yeah,
damn it.
sure.
I
That's quite
think
the
I was
difference.
probably. I think when I got started, I was like, this would have been 2006 when
Yeah.
the demo came out. So I was like, what, 32, something like that, around
Okay,
there.
I'm a little bit under still, but
Yeah.
getting there.
But no, just I'm doing good. I've got 3 kids. I've got a 23-year-old daughter, and no, none of you guys can date her. Number 2, I've got a 4-year-old.
But I
son.
was just gonna fly over later today. God damn it.
Corey, she hates Star Wars, so you're out of luck, dude.
Hey, that wasn't me.
That was it.
How did you
Alright,
get the accents mixed up on?
I'm sorry. And I do have a 1.5-year-old. So, and as you can see, we got started with these other kids very late in life. So it's been an interesting journey, to say the least.
So, and obviously we're gonna let everybody go next in a minute, but I gotta. It has to be pretty much. It has to be a pretty wild jump coming back into this, like after 10 years and just being gone from everything.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I really want to prod your brain about that later on, because like all of the tech, like you say, GitHub and stuff is like, it makes things so much easier, because
Absolutely.
we all remember the time when we had to like transfer files by like zip and
Yep.
code by zip, and oh my god.
Oh yeah. Oh, like it's hilarious, but believe it or not, I actually had a walk down memory lane not too long ago, looking for. I had to dust off these old hard drives essentially to pull assets that were done that are kind of misplaced right now. And I'm a hoarder. I mean, everyone jokes about that. It's always been that way. So I have everything, right? And I have all of like these old chat logs. I mean, it's hilarious. And I've kind of like just taken a look at some of them, and it's funny. I mean, we used to do stuff with spreadsheets, like keeping track of things. I mean, even Google, like the Google Docs and stuff, that wasn't a thing either. So all of this was being done like manually.
Locally?
It was zip files, messaging people directly, and then like I'm not even sure how the hell we did it. Like I don't even know how it worked.
We always had a pretty big team, and before we had Git, it would basically be, did I feel like uploading a version of the mod for the rest of the team once a month on my dial-up internet that would take literally a day for me to distribute it to anyone else. It was
Dial-up.
awful.
Your AOL address with the modem.
Yeah.
I remember those days. Like I do know that we actually had spreadsheets, like checklists essentially, that we would share. It's like, okay, these are the tasks, and we would color code columns for like things that needed to be done. Like it's like this is one, rigging was one color and so on and so forth. We would share that amongst the team. My team was always a lot smaller than Corey's team, so I did have the luxury of kind of like I knew everything because I was doing most of everything for a while. So I didn't have some of those issues. Yeah. But as the team grew, I needed to get somebody that was really good at managing that, and that was David Killerhertz. He became the de facto manager that could handle all of that coordination that I couldn't.
So I do gotta ask, man, like, you guys all just sound like kind of like boomers right now, if we're being completely honest. Like, you're talking about dial-up internet and sending things through zip files and stuff. And as a typical consumer
son, this was only a few years ago, I'll have you know.
Yeah, were you born
youngster?
after dial-up? You never used dial-up? I mean, I used dial-up 5 years after it was terrible because I lived out in the middle of nowhere.
So I live in
Away
Europe,
the
so I
country.
never had to do any of that.
Yeah. We don't.
I just didn't
we
have
don't wanna
internet
talk
growing
about
up.
that. Yeah.
Oh, sour.
Jeroen probably had the best internet out of any of us because Europe's always had that better. Like they've always been about 10 years ahead of America when it comes to infrastructure and internet.
Yeah, I don't have any of these issues. I'm sorry, I can't relate. I can't hear you over the speed of my broadband.
I was the first guy on my street to get DSL, which was a big deal, and that was around the year 2001. That's how.
Oh, God.
And then DSL emerged, changed over. Eventually, I got cable internet.
I was 6.
Oh God, dude. And then I remember, like, in 2006, things were pretty stable then. Like the internet was pretty fast. Like it wasn't gigabit. Like there was no Verizon Fios out there yet. But generally speaking, it was pretty solid and fast for the most part, except for there really wasn't a way, like voice communication was still crappy, right? Like there was Skype, which came out like maybe the mid-aughts. And then you had, like prior to that, you had TeamSpeak, which was like it was weird. And then you had, like Xfire had some voice some abilities. So talking to people was really difficult. Like that was more of a challenge than typing to people.
Oh, I bet, man. And of course, everybody also had terrible mic quality back then, too. So a mix of absolutely atrocious internet and terrible Modern Warfare 2 sounding microphones did not make for a good experience back in the day.
Oh, no. I mean, I remember playing online games like Medal of Honor, like Allied Assault, and it was just like the audio was just awful. Like it actually sounded people were talking on like World War II handset radios.
In the game.
Right, in the game, right. Like, there's like all this static in the background, and you're like saying, Roger that, copy that.
So, one thing I did want to really, really get into today in particular was...
By the way,
like
are we already throwing all the structure out, or like are we just going? It's like, are we gonna finish the intros or?
Oh, you know what? But that is a very important thing. Okay, let's go in this order.
I'm fine, just going.
Let's go in this order then. Corey, Jeroen, you two tell me, how you guys doing? How's everything going in your life right now?
I'm good. There's a lot of Star Wars stuff coming out, so that's always nice. It's very cold where I am, so that's bad. That's about everything going on right now.
That's true. You have a plethora of projects you've got coming with, you got your Thrawn's Revenge stuff, you got Fallen Republic, now you got Revan's Revenge. Like, that's a lot of mods and content to kind of be handling, man. That's a lot you got going on.
Yeah, we were going to run out for stuff for the artists to do, so we needed to, like, there's the real danger of finishing a mod and then having to move on with your life, and I just can't face that possibility.
That's true. Like, what else do we have in life but Empire War modding?
I will gladly take any excess artists that Corey has that need work. I will gladly take them, and they can come over, and I will give them art to do if they want.
Hey, man.
Put him in the slave camps of Z3R0X. He'll be running the rigs.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm catching the tail end of a flu right now, so if I sound a little off, I apologize. I'll mute myself periodically in case of any coughing or whatever. So, but other than that, I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, we've got the
And that's
we got the space overhaul coming with that with remake too, which is going to be pretty incredible from the like testing sessions that I've been a part of and whatnot. So, we've got a lot of quality products releasing within the next few months from a variety of different teams. And to the people that watch this podcast, by the way, I hope you do check out a variety of the things that are coming, because I feel like that's always been Empire War's strongest suit is the variety of mods versus like the, not necessarily the quality of certain mods, but more the variety of things we have to play, so there's a lot coming out this year. So if you're watching this, you should check out a variety of different things going into this year. But so for the primary topics of today, I wanted to really just kind of pick your brains a little bit about Empire War history. I know that's a bit of a broad subject. Yeah, go.
Question.
Yeah, what's your question?
I am very curious, Jeroen. Why did you change your name from Geronimo to Jeroen? And Corey, why did you go from Arbiter to Corey? I'm just curious. Why make the change?
Corey's story, no doubt, is much more interesting than mine, so I'll let him go first.
No, I just decided I wanted to use my real name. There was not really much there.
There you go.
Come on,
it was originally
that a little better.
It was originally Darth Arbiter, but I thought that sounded real fucking edgy. So I just got rid of the Darth first. Then it was Arbiter.
Yeah,
and then it's like,
Arbiter.
okay, well, I don't love the fake name thing because like it's not like it's a unique thing either. And then I've always got to have the whole Halo situation. Like, why don't you make a Halo mod? And then I just decided to go with my real name.
God, wait, so you were Darth Arbiter? I think I remember seeing that name at least like 11 years ago at some point or another.
Yeah, I started when I was 14 in 2000. Like, I joined the modding community about a month before the game came out, maybe a couple months, because I think I found Legacy of War in like December 2005, and the game released in February 2006.
Gotcha.
So
Corey was.
But you founded that?
Yeah, no.
I found like I found it on the internet. I didn't
Right.
like found it as in create it.
No, Corey is
Right,
probably, besides me, I think out of all that's left, except maybe a few of the guys on the Steiner team, Corey and I are probably the only ones left that were there from demo times to now. I think
I've
Corey,
actually-
Oh, yeah.
I
A few
remember
people
Steiner
on
still-
a few people on my team have been around. There's like 5 or 6 of us that are still active on my team that have been around since like year of release at least, if not slightly before, because they were part of like Ages of Star Wars.
Yeah.
And there are a few more that hang
You
out.
got
like,
all the. Sorry, go on.
There's we have a private team server, and almost everyone that's ever been on the team is still like around in some context. Like even if they're not actively modding anymore, most people still just hang around. So
excepting Cladius, who I actually do miss. I miss that
no,
guy.
he's in the server. He hasn't been like around in a while because he became a doctor a while ago. But he did buy me dinner a few years back, so that was
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, I would hope so.
Got a free one of that.
It's the least he can
Yeah.
do, right?
Very nice.
I was like
Very nice.
starting off as a YouTuber, didn't have a huge income, so when he came to the city for a conference, we went out for dinner and he paid. So worked out.
So Corey, I'm sure you remember way back, like we used to do the interviews with like influential people in the modding community. That was something I started, like doing these interviews, and we had.
I want to hear this. Sorry, who was on that show? I want to know
God.
who was on that show.
Well, the big guy was Mike NL. Like we actually got an interview with him, and
Oh,
it was
right.
yeah.
Tools.
But in
Legend.
Cladius was one of the guys we interviewed. I actually found the interview in its transcript format on one of those drives, and it's hilarious. I actually have it. I'm tempted to post it. It's pretty good.
Well, there was a while where
With this
he
permission,
and
you probably
Dr. Nick were on the Empire War File staff because like they had trouble holding on to people. So it got to a point where every active member of the Empire War Files team was just like from Thrawn's Revenge because no one else wanted to do it.
Yeah, well, if you remember, there was like a mini revolution over on the Empire at War. You're talking about File Front, right? The
Yeah.
Empire at War. That was like I mean, we can all agree it turned into a shitbox over there. It was really bad. I mean, it was just...
What happened there? That was beyond my time. I was kind of like active. I was doing I was very young. I was doing a one-man Old Republic mod. It was very sloppy and definitely old. I posted a couple versions on File Front, but then at one point it just sort of seemed to die off. What happened with there?
The site got
was...
bought and sold like 6 times and kept
true.
getting turned off and on.
Well, that and so there was no verification process to like let people onto there, right? Like anyone could just create an account and like not even verify that it's them, right? So you had like people...
Oh, so you got imposters and
Oh,
shit?
you had tons of imposters, right? Tons of... I mean, you guys have no idea what it's like to be the only adult in the room, right? Where you have like nonstop 12-year-olds just constantly, and 12-year-olds with Tourette's apparently, who just constantly...
I feel offended.
Just, they'd post the most obnoxious nonsense, right? There was no way to like discipline these people. There was no removing them. The ones that got removed, they'd come right back. Then, when Corey mentioned it got bought, I remember something happened where there was like a bit of a Napoleon thing going on, where the people that ran it just started banning people, and it was starting to get restrictive. And I remember that's when a bunch of these modding groups started popping up, like Omega modding group, and then there was like Alpha Blue, and then we created Everything Empire at War, the EEAW site. And that's when people just started drifting into like the various camps, and the community somewhat stabilized for the most part once those camps were all set up.
So I was a moderator on that site for you, and there was a few times where you disappeared for a few months. So it was just me and one other person who had moderator powers, but we couldn't ban anyone. So while you were gone, there would be people posting like literally just coming to the forums and posting porn on a daily basis, and we'd have to just delete the post, and we could not ban these people daily.
So, that's amazing.
And that's a funny, and by the way, Jay, that's actually a really good story. The reason I actually went to Corey, and actually wanted him to be a moderator on my site was because he was one of the only fair guys that I knew that would actually be even-handed with people, because what was happening was Jedi Counselor and these other people that we had running things over there, they either hated people or they liked people, and the people that they didn't like, they weren't very fair to. So if there was ever a dispute, they would essentially side with their friends, which was not a good way of running things. So I believe I wanted someone like Corey to like, hey, I need someone fair that is going to do the job and not just use it as some power trip to like ban people.
Now, this was 110% before my time, man, because by the time that I got on File Front, it was like 2011, I think.
I would have liked to have banned the porn people, by the way.
He tried, he just couldn't find the button.
Yeah. I looked for hours, just like, is there something I'm missing? It says I'm a moderator, but I can't ban anyone. I can delete the post.
Now, Corey, just to be fair, Corey is talking about a time that was probably after Republic at War came out, so that would have been like 2011, 2012, around there. And I would dip out for a while, and the truth of the matter is, I had a company that I was co-running, and that company began to really take off. So my responsibilities expanded immensely, and unfortunately, I could no longer just put in the time. And to be honest, the community began to get somewhat toxic, very bad, and it was just constant negativity, Jay. Constant.
Yeah.
And not from all corners, not from everywhere.
Just to preface,
it's bad. Yeah.
And just to preface for a lot of people that are going to be watching this, I made it a very strict thing that we're not going to talk about like any like chaotic dramas or anything. We're keeping everything kind of PG-13. Well,
wait.
We just had to talk about porn, but aside from that,
you mean you don't want to hear the story about the catfish? You really don't want to hear that story?
Let's come back to that. Hold that thought. Let's come
I
back
got
to
some
that.
good ones too, but I've been told to keep them all under wraps, so.
As long as we're not insulting people, I guess we can talk about some certain things, but
All right.
I would like to apologize to all the people who posted porn on Everything Empire at War. I did not mean to offend you with my remarks. I'm sure you've all grown since then.
Certainly. How does everything Empire at War though lead into ModDB? Because that is really where the Empire at War community moved to. At least as far as I know, that was the biggest site for a very long time. I remember
Database was
everything Empire
already
at War.
around. It was kind of like sharing space with FileFront, where everything Empire at War
Yeah.
was like a forum. So it had a lot of the discussion from the FileFront forums ended up going there after the EAW files forums were gone. But there was always like mods always had a pretty big presence on Mod Database for their own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The big ones did, right? Like, I mean, most of the major mods were on ModDB, it seemed like, and then some of the smaller ones, but basically, like, all the knowledge, and remember, a lot of these, like, other so, all right, we have to go back even further for a second, right? When the demo first came out, there were a lot of websites that popped up immediately, and they were petroglyph focused, not necessarily Star Wars focused. And that's because a lot of the staff that worked at Petroglyph came from Westwood Studios. And Westwood Studios obviously put out one of the greatest games ever, Command and Conquer. And you had a lot of the early modding community were Command and Conquer mods. In fact, Imperial Assault 2, that entire staff, almost all of them, came from the whole Command and Conquer modding community. All those guys. And in fact, Imperial Assault 1 was a Command and Conquer mod. And then 2 obviously was going to be the Empire at War mod. So a lot of those guys just kind of drifted over from Command and Conquer, and they started. So you had all these petroglyph, Petrolution, Petro forums that started out that died around 2007, 2008, and everything just moved to FileFront, and then eventually moved onto those other websites like ModDB, EEAW, Omega, and Alpha Blue. That's where you kind of had that.
Wow, I literally feel like a child because holy cow, I was not there for any of that. Like I saw a lot of stuff on FileFront. I saw a little bit of a lot of arguments on FileFront here and there, and then suddenly everything was just on ModDB. So I was just like, okay, I guess we're all over here now. So I'll go start downloading mods from over here.
That, actually.
But
I remember I really got going myself on the ModDB page. You guys clearly were here just before me and still on FileFront as such. I do remember, however, just starting out modding and finding the FileFront forums, and I occasionally posted on Warpnull's model release thread, which that man put out content at staggering pace, like sometimes a model a week. It was very impressive. And I began being a little bit active and not being a native English speaker. Did my best, but didn't always was able to speak the language all that well. And at one point, I remember being very happy that one of the moderators gave me like a special forum tag that says, the moderators think I'm a special person. And I was like, that's so great. And now looking back on that, I'm like, oh God, so bad.
Yeah, and you remember who one of those moderators was, right?
Who is that? Was that you?
No, Strobe. Strobe was one of the moderators on
Oh
FF
boy,
for a while.
I got some stories there, but I'm told to keep them all quiet.
I know, right? But yeah, Strobe was pretty much one of the big towards the end there. He was moderating a lot of the FileFront stuff. I do know that once Corey kind of took on a lot of a moderating role, I will give him credit. He actually did do a good job. I mean, he was one of the only guys that actually did a good job and wasn't just using it as some sort of like, avenue to like push some agenda.
Unlimited power.
Right, unlimited power. He actually did a good job, and a lot of the drama kind of drifted. Like he was good at minimizing some of the drama, which is what I wanted, right? I mean, because JC was very, it was like a lightning rod for drama. So I just, we were able to minimize a lot of that by having him just be a fair hand and, arbitrating. See what I did there? Arbitrating some of those disputes, So he was a good arbiter.
That's a good way to put it.
I know.
So, I mean, what's funny is I actually tried to get putting my hand in modding for a little bit. I remember taking, I think it might have been the old Republic at War mod, Jeroen. I actually tried taking that and forging some kind of bootleg Galactic Conquest with a mix of that and the Star Wars: The Old Republic mod that came out in like 2013 and 2014. They used a bunch of assets from Star Wars: The Old Republic. I gave my best hand at trying to build that project. Never made anything out of it, honestly. It crashed way too much, and to be perfectly honest, I just slapped things in certain places, slapped some code here and there. I was like, yeah, this should work, right?
Well, that might not even be your fault, because goddamn, that was one that was if slapstick humor was a mod, Old Republic at War was basically that.
It wasn't that bad.
It was coded so poorly. I was very young and I had no idea about coding or anything, so I just put in some code and I did my best. It was a spaghetti mess.
But I helped code that mod. What are you trying to say?
Wait, did you say Old Republic or did you say Republic?
I'm just teasing with you, dude. I'm just teasing. I know.
Oh, okay.
I thought I said Old Republic.
Am I fucking up? No.
No. I'm just messing around. It was just funny watching him stop. Go. Wait. What am I?
Yeah, I was like, wait, did I mishear that?
No, I didn't code that.
So, I do have a general universal question for all of you. We'll get back more into the history of Empire War stuff in a minute, but I just really want to hear a lot of your personal takes on this particular question. But I want to know, like, out of all of this stuff that you guys have done over the last decade, over the last, 10, 12 years, like, what's been your favorite part about it from all of this? And we'll go in a line, we'll go in order so we can kind of keep things a little organized. Corey, we'll start with you, but yeah, what's been your favorite part of like doing all this over the last like decade?
I mean, it sounds like fake PR answer, but it really is working with my team. Like we've been doing this for as long as we have with each other because the process is more fun. Like I care more about that process than the results, and I think that does help with the results where we all kind of understand, even if we do something that isn't great at one point, then as long as we're still having fun working on it, we can go back and fix it. So getting to work with a bunch of people from a bunch of different places and just having fun with that has been the best part of it for me.
It's kind of like building a bond with a group of people, basically. Like you've worked with these people so long that it's like, it transcends it transcends beyond just being, like a couple of guys online. They become friends, family, even.
Yeah, like I started this team when I was 14, and I'm almost 31 now. I'm 31 next month, and like I was saying earlier, some of the people on the team now are still people that were on the team at the start. Like most people have joined in the last 5 or 6 years, but people like Dr. Nick and Slorney that I've known like since I was 14 years old and have in some cases gone to actually meet them or hang out in real life. And so like I've known them through basically every phase of my life so far.
Yeah, it's funny hearing you say 14, and it really is true that Empire War released 17 years ago. Pretty soon, it'll be its 17th birthday. It's soon.
So old. It's almost old enough to drink.
Yeah, 4 more years.
In Europe, already can.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All
right.
But going back to that particular question, who wants to go next? Z3R0X or Jeroen? One of you two.
I'll take that one. I wanted to speak up, but I was waiting for you to give the turns. Same
all
answer
yours,
as Corey. Of course, now it doesn't have the impact, but it's 100% actually coming to work with a team that knows what they're doing, is actually capable of forming good ideas and executing on them. That's such a goddamn pleasure. I used for a very long time to either work by myself on my mods, just as my own kind of thing, or work with one other person, Nico. And then with occasionally some contributors around as well, but mostly just us. And you get to make all the decisions yourself, and in that sense, the file sharing problem wasn't as bad. Still got bad, but not as bad. So in that sense, there's a lot of freedom to that, but when you eventually get to the point where you do, we had at one point, I guess, very very short backstory. I'll keep it very short. We had a third member on the team, and there was a pretty big falling out there, and she was very productive, and I really liked having her on the team. She was also great for the team dynamic. It's just very fun having her around, and I knew I didn't want to go back to just having 2 people, so I sent out a call to the community we had at the time on Discord, We had some people that had been experimenting with modding as well. Some people made their own tweaks. A lot of people make submods and stuff. So I invited some of them on. Asked like, "Hey, would you be interested in maybe hopping on?" That's been the best decision ever. Some of those people I know in real life as well. We sometimes hang out. A bunch of them live in Germany. One of them lives in Italy. We hang out. We go on vacations, and it's it's just a really great time to work with people that actually know what they're doing. I haven't known them all for that long. Not like Corey since I was like 14. Last year, my father, this in February, my father had a heart attack, and I had to take over the family meal service that we do, or it would all collapse while he was in the hospital. And I had to completely step away from modding in the last month before we were set to release our large 4.0 update. And I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even really be there in advisory or any work, and the team got it across the finish line as if it was nothing. It was amazing to see. I was thankfully there just in time for the release. Just being able to work with really good people is an immense pleasure, and I'd say that's definitely the best part of modding up till now.
Sorry to hear that, dude.
Yeah, he is fine, thankfully. My dad is made out of on the Struck team. He's back up and running, thankfully. But now I run that business with him. Also, why I don't have much time for modding nowadays anymore. Allows me to really focus on what is important to me in modding, which is also good. But not to make the story too long. That's definitely the most important thing for me. And thanks. And now for Z3R0X.
You have the floor, brother.
All right, well, let's start with one thing. First off, nobody ever gets my name right. There's like 3 people that get it. Jay and I talked about this a while ago. So, Jay, what is my actual nickname?
It's just Z3R0X. No joke.
That's correct. That's right. It's Z3R0X.
Are you kidding me?
No.
It's Z3R0X?
Oh
my god.
That's kind of on you, gotta be honest there.
Dude, I've had this discussion forever, but it's funny. The only guy to ever get it right from the get-go was Mike NL. Because he's like a hardcore programmer, and he was like, yeah, I get it. It's the, every memory address starts with Z3R0X, and it just, it doesn't matter. Point is that rather than correcting people, I've just been around, okay, I guess I'm this guy.
I'm Z3R0X now.
Yeah,
I am
right.
Z3R0X.
I'm the copy machine people. So yeah, right. So it is what it is. I just never changed it, and it's just one of those lore things now that it's whatever. But I would honestly say probably one of the coolest things and most rewarding things that came out of all that was when I started my project, Republic at War. It was basically just going to be the Z3R0X mod 4. The 3.5 mod had been very popular, and I'll be honest.
I think you'll find it's the Z3R0X mod, but
right. Touche. You got me there. All right. So there it was, and I'll be honest. That 3.5 mod, it was nothing more than just an enhanced unit mod, right? Like we're just dumping a bunch of units, and I think I touched a little bit on some trying to start new features, like adding in the Vong as like this, feeble attempt as like this Uber faction, that's not playable. Doing the shipbuilding companies, that was kind of a new thing that a lot of people liked. But it wasn't fleshed out well. When I started the version 4, which was Republic at War, essentially, it was supposed to be another version of that, but Clone Wars. The mod evolved over time, and it got to the point where I began to realize that I'm not even sure if I can do this mod because of how complex it was starting to become. When I started out, I was a coder, and I was a mapper, and with getting people to do things and then not being able to find people that could do certain things, it forced me to learn how to do certain things. 3ds Max is one of them. I mean, I had to teach myself 3ds Max. I had some experience in CAD, but Max was something new. I'd had some experience in Photoshop, so it wasn't a hard jump to go in there. But there was this guy on the Imperial Assault team, Swebex, he was one of the leaders of that mod, and This guy essentially mentored me on the modeling side. I mean, I would pepper this guy with questions constantly with Max, and he held my hand and walked me through it. He taught me how to rig, and then from that point on, I just kind of began teaching myself. And I had to learn how to do sound editing. I had to learn how to do video editing. There was so much I had to learn, and I'll tell you something. The most rewarding part of all of that was watching this project go from, I don't think I can do this, to 4 years later being one of the, if not the biggest, most complete releases to get put out, at that time in 2011. Like, I'm not talking about things that came out later, but up to that point, it was the biggest. That was a huge, huge win. And I can't tell you the amount of pride I had in that. And also, the people that came on towards like around 2010, right? Like a little bit after that. These are some phenomenal people. And as I drifted away, they drifted away also. And those people, a lot of you know, like Warbnall, for example. I mean, me drifting away from the community, I'm not saying that he left because I left, but it played a role, right? When I came back,
I was amazed to see he came back.
So when I came back, I reached out to everyone that was on the staff back then. And I am very pleased to say, and I can announce it here too also, another big one just came back. Sidious Invader is officially back now on our team. And this is a guy that is legendary. He was one of the first people to start some of the AI scripts. Like, he put out that boarding script years ago, long ago, right? But now officially we have everybody that was ever on this team, during release time is now back.
Wow, so you're getting the literal original band back together.
Correct. And not to mention all the new stuff, all the new people that have jumped on as well. And these are wonderful people as I'm getting to know them and become friends with them. It's an interesting, eclectic group of people, very talented people. But that being said, these are some of the best modders and people in the community I've ever met. David, Killer Herds, amazing guy, right? And he's a fellow Canuck, Corey, So, also Anakin. This is a kid, that joined our project when he was 14 years old, right? And I hired him on to do essentially German translation, right, for the text. And this is a guy who, he was in school for programming. I mean, he's a software development guy. But talk about, like, grabbing the bull by the horns and running with it. He is now my co-lead on this project. And he's a phenomenal guy. He's a German, so he's got that interesting sense of humor. But every single one of these guys, they're just great, and they are putting aside their personal things that they're doing. Warb he is not in this community anymore, but he's back. I can't say if he's going to start releasing free release models again. I don't think he is, but he is willing to help us out and start working again, and he is working. So that's been, for me, that's been the most rewarding thing, is watching this take shape and come to fruition, and forging these relationships and watching some of these people over the years grow into the professionals that they've become.
So I do have one universal question for you in particular, Z3R0X, or do I call you Z3R0X? What the hell do we call you?
Just go with the Z3R0X, all right? It's what's done.
I gotta say, man, it's gonna be Z3R0X for me, mate. I'll enjoy the Z3R0X memories and the idea that it should be Z3R0X, but it's gonna be Z3R0X for me. I'm sorry, dude.
And it's fine. I'm okay with it, right?
It's like what Corey said. You kind of did that to yourself, honestly.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I've got no one to blame. I thought I was being clever, and unfortunately, it backfired.
He played himself.
Right.
Yeah, he played himself.
Right. I or as in old speak, I pwned myself. All right.
Oh God, dude, you just took me back to like 2009 in the Call of Duty lobby. Good Lord.
I'm waiting for the OK Boomer,
But so, wow, I completely lost my train of thought with what I was actually about to ask. So can you confirm this for me? How old is Warb? I've heard he's 80. I've heard he's 40. How old is this dude?
I've heard he's 80.
Okay, so I don't think I'm authorized to really answer that. I can tell you though that he is not a kid. All right. Well, all right.
Well,
He
I would
wasn't a
assume
kid
so.
back-
He's been making
No, no, no,
stuff
no.
for like
He
20
is
years.
not,
now.
in fact, 5 years old.
He was not a child back then either. All right. He was also pretty much one of the adults in the room. Warb keeps a very low profile. I know that doesn't sound right, but it's as far as like him being out there, right? Like chatting and like that's never been him. And I don't want to speak for him, but I just know that he's always kind of just kept his head down and he just likes to work on this stuff. He just likes to be down in the trenches and just making stuff. But I think I can confirm with you that he is on the older side of this group and not the younger side, if that answers your question.
Oh yeah, no, that absolutely does actually. It's just interesting considering how long he's in particular has been doing this, and I'm certain to some extent. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. He's had some kind of influence on every single person in this call at some point or another in terms of the content that he's released, or the curiosities behind who he is. Because he's always kind of remained an anomaly or a little bit anonymous. Like nobody really knows a whole lot about him, at least on publicly, But
I know a lot. I know a lot simply because we've talked a lot over the years.
Okay, yeah.
I will tell you, I have never spoken to him like through voice ever. It never came up to be a thing, and I really never needed to. Our communication has always been through email or like instant messenger and whatnot. But we have chatted over the years. We have, I've learned some things, so I do know his name. I know generally like what he does. Like I have a pretty good insight to that. But like I said, he's always been. I don't think private's the word. It's just he's not one to put that stuff out there, and
He likes to keep to himself.
Correct. I've respected that, and it's not my place. Someday he may decide, like, hey, I want to, I'm going to show you me. But he's just until that day comes, I got to respect the guy. So.
Oh yeah, that's completely understandable.
But he is an amazing person. Super nice. Probably one of the most chill guys you'll ever get to talk to. Not to mention, generous, and I mean that like one of the most generous people with his time, and it just like I can't stress that enough. Like there aren't many people like him out there.
Yep. And I mean, to this day, I don't think we've ever had another guy that just casually, makes these incredibly good-looking models, at least, for their time. They still look good to date, honestly. That just will happily release them to the public,
No, he.
Yeah, and especially at the time where he did, because at the time it was the Empire War community has always been very much of a my stuff, not your stuff kind of place. And at the time where Warp was active, when I just started out, he just released like such an avalanche of free release models just for everybody to use, which was exactly like you said, Z. Was very generous, and at a time where very few other people do that stuff, it's incredible to see. It got my own first project started, and I'm sure many others.
He created. I will say this though about that time. He angered a lot of people.
What? How?
Oh, not me, not other. Now, no one in this chat, but I can tell you with certainty, him releasing those models really ticked off quite a few people. Because you had teams that had models that they had done that were, or art assets that were comparable. And they were like, we own this, you don't.
They're sacred.
And
then this guy came along.
Here he comes along and releases these unique units that only they had. And now these other teams get to use those. And it was like basically like he went around those people and was like, okay, well, you're not going to release this. I'm going to make this. And now anyone can use it. And that really changed the power structure.
He was like a freedom fighter for the Empire War community.
Dude, I cannot tell you how much that changed the corridors of power in the Empire at War community than what he did. He really shook things up with that.
Well, even earlier than that, there was a bigger pain point with a lot of the earlier mods, including Imperial Assault and Legacy of War, when Evil Jedi free-released all the Warlords mods. because that's when you started. So you had all the mods that were announced before Empire at War came out, which were actually a lot more varied in what they covered, where you had a Star Wars mod for every era, but you also had like Project Mars, which was its own OC. You had Dawn of Victory, which was another kind of OC, but kind of based on Harry Turtledove stuff. And you had like Stargate mods. You had most universes imaginable, but then when Evil Jedi's models came out, a lot of the people you started seeing a lot of unit mods that were pretty quickly put together. And I know a lot of the Absolute Corruption was one of them, but there was also like Sonic Zero's A Galaxy Divided, which was like a day after Evil Jedi put the mods out. I think he had like 100 units in game, and they weren't the best even at the time. It wasn't the best rigging and coding job. But for the people that were like looking forward to these long-term projects that had been announced for the last year and slowly showing progress, then it's like, oh, well, this thing's out. I'm going to play this now. And why aren't you guys done with your thing yet? And that was a thing that kind of, I think, upset a lot of the original mods in some ways, in the way that Z3R0X is talking about, but also in just, okay, now no one wants to join to help us finish this stuff. And I think that did kill off a lot of those original mods. And it's part of why Empire at War, I think, has been just Star Wars for the last 20 years. Whereas if you look at games like Sins, there's like Star Wars mods, but there's also something from every other universe as well.
Oh yeah, Star Trek.
That is really, really interesting. I would that's such an interesting counterpoint. I was actually about to say that I feel like Warp Null has been a real I wouldn't necessarily even say contributor, but mostly it was infrastructure to the Empire at War community as a whole, because very many projects built on everything he did, and so many projects would just not have gotten going without the man. But you bring up an interesting point. Maybe some of the more, at the time, effort-intensive projects were just scrapped.
Well, think about because the mods in the community that have original models between 2008 and 2016, because
very few.
We had, and you did a lot of that as well, but outside of that, most mods were still just doing whatever they could out of Evil Jedi's mods or Warp Null's mods. And I'm not saying that as like, oh, they shouldn't have done that. It was like a bunch of stuff just wouldn't have existed without that being out there. But there was also a little bit of a trade-off of people like, oh, I don't need to learn how to model, so I'm not going to learn how to model. I'll just do this Star Wars mod.
We I guess we were fortunate because one, Evil Jedi was actually on IA2 staff. So we actually got, when we merged, we actually got all of his assets that he gave us. Not to mention, there were specific meshes that were built for Imperial Assault 2 that were not ever put out in those Warlords models that we actually got access to. Now, some of those ended up in his Homeworlds mod, which touched off this ridiculous shitstorm of fighting because a bunch of people began porting those out of Homeworlds without his permission, and that caused a lot of drama.
Is that why everyone originally hates porting? Is that where that hate comes from?
No, I think we probably won't get too much into this because this goes into the drama thing here, But and I don't want to name names because
I was just curious.
Feel free to discuss it. We don't have to name names, but I mean, like, it's perfectly acceptable.
There was a person who essentially jumped into the modding community at around 2008.
I think I already know who we're talking about.
I think everyone knows who this is.
This individual really began to cause a lot of problems. Basically, there was no respect for anyone's work whatsoever. This person began to port assets from X-Wing, from the old Clone Wars 2002 games, from like everything.
Wait, are you including X-Wing Alliance in that?
Oh yeah, X-Wing Alliance, right? Yep. Also Rebellion. I mean, anything you could think of that had a model, including Homeworlds, by the way, and Warlords, stuff just began getting put out there. And
it just totally clicked in my head what Corey just did right there.
It didn't for me, but okay.
I missed the joke.
Don't worry about it.
That was good.
So, basically, like, I remember early contacts with this individual Believe it or not, EJ actually reached out to this person telling him, you do not have my authorization to use this stuff. And he was pretty much like, fuck you. I mean, like, hey, it's LucasArts. I can do what I want. You can't do anything. And, part of that is kind of why EJ got like a little disgusted with the EAW. Like that was a big chunk of it, was that this is where we've gone, right? Like, and we tried very hard to get this person to bring him into compliance with how things should be. I tried my best. I made some progress, and there was this uneasy agreement we made with this guy, all right? But it was very tenuous, and it was never good. But I will say, Warb working for us also, he put out his free release stuff, but he would do stuff just for us, and one thing you guys got to know about Warb does not do land. He does like tanks and stuff, but like infantry, he doesn't do any of it. Just won't do it. I was forced to learn how to do that. So like a lot of our units, for example, like our land units, I mean, I think I modeled like maybe 40 or 50% of our land units were modeled and textured by me. 100%. A lot of the props, other things came from other sources, and then you've got like a ton of Warbs and obviously EJ's fingerprints all over space. It's pretty much those two. I think the only space model I did was our droid bomber, just because nobody else wanted to do it, so I did it. But that's pretty much that. Those models were a good like shot in the arm, I think, because but I think Corey's right. When all that stuff got flooded out there, people just stopped wanting to like figure things out for themselves. It was just more of like, oh, I've got every model I ever need. I don't need to go learn how to do this. I can just use this stuff. And
yeah, there's just no reason to do like, if you have most of what you could want, then you've already got it, and then it doesn't have to take the time, so you don't have as much time to spend on different features because the assets are already done. So like most mods just became that. But yeah, sorry.
Right. No, I totally agree with you.
These days they don't even want to learn how to model anymore.
Well, I mean, look, the community became its own worst enemy, essentially, right? I mean, you have just, you had 300 mods all doing essentially the same thing, which was just hilarious. Like, you had all these projects that were just renamed versions of other projects that had already been out there.
How many Clone Wars mods do you think we've ever had in one single sitting for this game's history? How many Clone Wars mods? So many of them didn't
even come out.
Yep.
Yeah, that was, it's funny. I mean, there were a couple that came out before Republic at War, but let's be honest, and I don't think I'm offending anybody, they weren't good, all right? And they were more of an attempt to scoop bigger projects than they were like actually trying to do something. And that was something else that was a real issue. And it might be an issue nowadays, is that teams trying to scoop one another. What I mean by that is like, they want to be the first to have something new in that, so there's like this race, like an arms race to have like the latest, greatest. And rather than collaboration, you have competition, which isn't always good.
I do think
now that lasted a while.
I do think that's definitely died down a little bit, and I only say that just from being a part of so many different like testing teams and just trying a bunch of different mods and being in a bunch of different communities and whatnot. I do remember that era of like 2015 to like 2018 where everything was just completely competitive as all be damned. It started a lot with the Empire War modding server that was on Discord for a while. And there was a whole lot of back and forth, and obviously some good discussions, some bad discussions. But I feel like everything's kind of mellowed out for the most part in recent years. Like everybody's kind of found their own like pocket of. I've been calling the Empire War community a republic. Basically, we're like a republic in Star Wars. But everybody's found their own little like sector to kind of be a part of. Like we've got all the Thrones Revenge, Empire War X stuff. We've got everything with like Remake, and now we've got Republic of War. We've got Awakening the Rebellion. But it feels like everything's kind of mellowed out now. Where for the most part, a lot of the people in charge of all these projects kind of respect each other a lot more. You know, they respect them, they leave them in their own lanes. You know, the only ones that still argue are usually the fans, to be perfectly honest, which is kind of funny. You know, everybody else has kind of gotten older and, you know, realized there's no point to doing a lot of this, you know, back and forth needlessly anymore.
Yeah, that is definitely an interesting dynamic, and I think I talked about this with Xerox a week or so ago, maybe. It was the dynamic shift when ModDB, which is individual mod pages where people can sort of jump in between pages, where people present their work, and creators can very readily jump onto other pages and then start talking in chat and such. It was easy to switch between projects, but it was also sorry. More individualistic, whereas now, with the transition over to Discord a few years ago, the servers themselves are much more isolated, so it is far easier for people to get stuck in their own little lanes. And I don't actually think that's a bad thing, because it has clearly had a very positive effect. Well, aside from the fact that everyone grew up a bit and some of the troublemakers left. But it's definitely had a positive effect on the dynamic between the mod teams, I would say. And it's definitely a much better place than it was, say, 10 years ago, in my experience.
I will say this, though. And I've been in other modding communities. You know, I am very old, as you all know, and I've been around a very long time.
Very old.
And even in the Star Wars world, I mean, look, I was in the Sins of a Solar Empire community for a minute under a different name, which will probably amuse Corey, all right? And I was
it Z3R0X?
No. That's funny though.
Zero Y?
No.
I got 24 more of these.
Hey, I'll maybe offline I'll tell Corey what it was, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, I was also in the Stellaris community for a minute, you know, and you know, other games in the past as well. I will say the Empire at War community is probably. It has been one of the most fulfilling, but also most challenging communities I've ever been in. The level of drama has never been this high with anything else. Sorry, that's my son, guys. I apologize.
Bro, you should have been around a few years ago. That was fire.
Dude,
Fire in the streets.
Things have happened that I would never have think would have happened, which is why, like, I joked about the whole catfish story. I mean, that never happened anywhere else but here.
I think part of that does
come
back
tell me
to
about
that
the catfish story.
Sorry, you a fan of Darth Nihilist, Drew? But I
know him.
I think a lot of it does come back to the idea that, especially when everyone's younger, then it does feel like there's more of a competitive element. People kind of grow out of that a bit more. But I think a big part of it, like having been almost equally as involved in Sins as I have been in Empire at War, that whenever I've seen conflict within Sins, the biggest driver of it has been if there's two mods that are kind of covering the same thing. And with how Empire at War was always like Star Wars mod versus Star Wars mod, like everyone's doing their own Clone Wars mod, or everyone's doing a mod in this period, whether it's people within teams that are starting off saying like, oh, we want to beat you at whatever, or if it's more commonly driven by fans saying like, hey, why do you suck more than that team over there? You don't get that as much when you're comparing like a Star Trek mod, like Star Trek Armada 3 to Stargate Races and Sins. And like it was when I started modding Sins, we were kind of insular within that community. Like we started the mod and then we didn't really talk to many people, and I started like over time I opened up a bit more to communicating with other Sins modders. They're like, yeah, we thought that was really weird. But yeah, I came from Empire at War where it's a constant shootout. I was afraid.
But
you know, petrified.
I wonder if that's because of the fact that Empire at War, in my opinion, is a little bit more dynamic than Sins. Like Sins is kind of a linear-esque game, so there's only so much you can do that'll really cause chaos, I guess, in that community. You know, like the game's a little bit more simple in terms of like how it's played. You know, everything's space based. You can't really pause it. It's not like an Empire War. Like you can pause the Sins. I don't know what I'm talking about, but it's a little less of a dynamic game compared to Empire War, where you have all these different elements from skirmish to space combat to ground combat. Now you can add all these, you know, different diplomatic things like they've been, you know, doing already. You know, Empire War X.
I'd say that's more recently the case, but like Sins has a lot of different stuff you can do, and there's a lot of like new features that people were able to come up with like buff systems. And modders have almost universally been more okay with sharing that stuff around. Like there has been conflict, but it was usually between, and I don't think they'll mind me saying this, but like when Sacrifice of Angels 2 and Star Trek Armada 3 were both starting up, those are both Star Trek mods, where when they were both in the early stages, there was a bit of conflict because they were both Star Trek mods and people felt more like there were toes being stepped on. But when it turned into mods that are covering different universes or different periods within the same universe, using literally the exact same features and code that just universally got shared around, whether that's shaders, which have been edited a bit more in Sins than in Empire at War at the time, and like just straight up ship abilities, like that never became an issue the same way that it would sometimes become an Empire at War. And I think having at least some separation in what you're doing is an important part there, rather than just like who's going to be the fastest to put Evil Jedi's Dreadnought model in game.
Yep.
Well, the big, I think Corey touched on this, but I would have to say that if you look at the average age, right, of the average player of some of these games, you'll find a lot of insight into those numbers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Sins was never geared towards children, and I love Sins, but I'm not a child. And I would think that most of the community over there, from what I saw when I was in it briefly, was that you generally had, you had some people that trended younger as well, but overall, you had a pretty mature group of people overall. Whereas EAW, going back, the average age was like 13, 14 years old. Like every modder I talked to was literally in middle school. It seemed like, right? And so when you'd encounter older people like Strobe or like Warb, for example, or Mike and EJ, those guys, it was always interesting, right? It's like they're adults, and you look at what's being put out by them and the work, and then you looked at some of these other issues that were going on, and you realized that these mod teams were comprised of kids that were 12, 13, and 14 years old, and which can be a good thing and can be a bad thing.
Yeah, and it also boils down to the dynamics of the kind of games we're playing. Star Wars has always been more of a family-friendly kind of genre, to be perfectly to begin with, anyway. And Sins, when I first played Sins, yeah, exactly. And Sins has always been more of it's always given a darker tone. You know, it had a more mature storyline of human survival and extinction and all of this kind of stuff. So I think they just attracted two entirely different audiences. Like there was so much.
There was actually a lot of overlap in the people who would mod the games beyond just us. Like there were some people who were huge points of pain in the Empire War community, and they also worked on Sin stuff. But rather than engage in the way that the Empire War community sometimes did, that person is just entirely frozen out of the rest of the Sins community. They just don't deal with them. Like they had the sense from the start that like it's just not worth it. And I don't think that just speaks to the age of the people involved, because in many cases it is the same people. But
well, look, you always
a very
get
specific same person,
right? You always get some personality types, okay, and that's going to be in any community, right? You're going to have those issues. And that's, look, but we had people that jumped into the EAW community and were sickened by it and left immediately for Sins. One of the biggest was a guy named Bale Knight, who created a really good mod early on that did some things that nobody else had done. And he was gone. He was there and gone. And his big thing was, again, immediately he releases this wonderful thing and people start tearing it apart. And tearing it apart as in like, stripping it down, exporting the stuff, and using it with no permission.
It was a lawless land back in the day. It was
indeed, right? And I agree with Corey, though. When I was, the Sins community is far different, and I was actually impressed by what I saw. This is much more regulated. Like, it just seems controlled versus the opposite.
Yep. And
it's like, I think when you have fans that are saying things and doing things, that can put anybody in a bad position, right?
Yep.
I mean, we had that issue as well, where people would come over and basically trash other projects, right? And you would also have people that would come over that were fans of those other projects and begin to trash our project, right? It's human nature to want to defend your work, right? It's just that's built into you, right? You're going to defend. And most of the horrible I've seen has come about from that, right? Where you've got, unregulated just vitriol coming from some of the fan base, and you have the devs essentially trying to defend that, like defend their work against these individuals.
It's. I'm sorry, you finished. I'm sorry, you finished. I don't want to cut you off. When I was talking briefly to Jeroen about this, how I wanted to kind of format this podcast in terms of what kind of topics we were going to discuss, and avoiding some of the rather sensitive things. And I did jokingly say I don't want the armies of every single other modding community, coming down on my neck if some rather sensitive topic got brought upon us, because fans and obviously developers too, but mostly the fans, they're passionate, man. If you hate on one project, you can guarantee there's going to be somebody or dozens that are willing to defend that project and so on. It's both admirable, but at the same time, it's a little insane, I guess. And I respect it. I respect them for their passion, but there are lines that people have crossed that are just a little extreme.
Oh, not to mention, people have been manipulated into thinking certain things about others as well, and that's happened to me as well. I was manipulated for a while into believing certain things about some people I came to end up being very close with, right? Yeah. And me personally, I can tell you that I can count on one hand the number of people I actually had a severe issue with in this community. I just did not want to be around them. I didn't like them. And, I wouldn't spit on them. I wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire. Okay. And,
Jesus Christ.
I am proud to say that none of those individuals are in this chat right now, in this podcast. And a couple of them, two are still around. Unfortunately, they're there. They're out there. I see them. One of them is not. Okay. He's gone. But that was pretty much it, right? And those disputes, they went beyond just you took my model, right? I mean, they were
it got personal. It got really personal. It got really personal.
Again, not naming names, but there was a guy. It was so bad. This guy, all right, with his what he was doing, what he was saying to me. And I contemplated getting on an airplane and beating up this guy. I mean, it was that, he brought out the mom jokes, okay? I mean, he was bringing, he was on a level that nobody else was. He was talking about, my breeding, okay? It was just
so,
my background, right? I mean, he was using a lot of, it was bad, okay? And, but these other mini disputes, or I call them philosophical disputes, where it's we have one philosophy how we like to work, or vice versa. Those were always petty, and they weren't really escalated into some horrible thing.
So this question is particularly for Corey, because you've always been a pretty calm guy for as long as I've known you. At least you've always been a pretty laid back, relaxed guy. Have you ever had anybody that you've wanted to get on an airplane to go beat up out of curiosity? You don't have to say their name.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Come on. Come on. You
know. Obviously, you don't have to name any names, obviously, but
I feel like most people in the community have felt that way about me at least once, though.
I look. I can say this because I like the guy, but come on, Corey. I think at one point you wanted to come beat me up. At some point, probably. No.
We're gonna have an Empire War boxing match, just like those YouTube boxing matches.
We'll get into the octagon and beat each other. We're gonna have to bring some members back though from the dead to make that really worthwhile.
My fight or flight response goes heavily in the flight direction. There are many people that I've gotten into significant arguments with over the last 17 years, but I've never tried to. I try not to let that become a permanent thing. I'll become kind of trepidatious about them, but I also try to understand that whatever's going on, like they have personal life factors that also inform that. I have bad days. I know, like within my team, like we'll have arguments sometimes, even though on the whole we all get along. And I try not to extrapolate too much on that. Like I know there are a few people in the community who've had like, there's no other word to use but conspiracy theories about me that make no fucking sense whatsoever, where I don't understand the underlying logic of what they think I'm doing. But
it just reaches a point where it's just like, okay, guys, like I'm just here to make a game. Like it's not that deep, you know. We're not.
It's interesting.
People get very committed to their work, though. Like, people in Empire at War, like myself, I made working on Empire at War and live streaming a job for myself for like three years before I wanted to get out, and eventually with my dad's heart attack was very swiftly got forced out. Like people get very, very invested in their work and in their mods, and that definitely leads to clashes. I myself, when I was like 16, I definitely was the kind of trash talker, and I definitely occasionally stirred up some shit that may not necessarily have been necessary. But you know, you kind of grow out of that.
Yeah, you grew up, and that's what matters.
Well,
yeah.
Geronimo was always a chill guy. I always thought. I mean, I didn't have a ton of interaction with Geronimo way back. Some a little bit, mostly through Strobe, but I always thought he was pretty chill. As for Corey, it's hard not to like Corey. Like it's hard not to like. If I wanted to not like him, he made it very difficult to actually like follow up with that. I mean, I know that there were a couple of times I was a little angry with him, but he made it very difficult for that feeling to continue, just because it's like you just, you know, I was actually going through a couple of old chat logs I saw from him. It was like way back, and it was like, I remember that. I remember that incident. You know, I remember that day. Like it was just, it's one of those things where I don't know if it's his personality or what. It's hard to not like the guy. You know, he kind of just, you know, I don't know. It's one of those things where you can't stay mad at somebody. I mean, look, he and I had an issue. I mean, Corey, do you remember that? I don't know if you remember. All right. I mean, and if you look at the background of that, like I've reflected on that over the years. You know, that how that came about was essentially I was being told things by someone, two people actually, and it turned out to be not true. And I believed what I was being told enough to form an opinion. And even though I asked this person, like Corey, like, hey, is this true? And he denied it. I didn't believe him. Like, I just didn't believe him. And let's put it this way. I learned later on what was really going on, and I just removed that person out of my sphere, right? Like they were no longer, I blocked them, essentially, blocked them. And I didn't think there was an issue anymore. It's like, you know, I actually felt bad about, you know, Sumba went down. So, you know, I know Corey, I think way back when I told you that, hey, you know, I fucked up. I was wrong, you know, but I'll tell you again, I was wrong. I messed up, you know. So
I don't think we've actually talked about this since it happened, but I appreciate that.
I mean, you know,
the resolution came in clutch 10 years down the line.
Look, I'm one of those people, Jay, that I have a very unique personality. I think most people will agree. You either love me or you hate me. There is no middle ground, and it's been like that in this community as well.
Well, you're a fellow Ohioan, so I can't really blame you.
You know, I'm very out there. You know, like when it comes to like how I feel, I've never been one to like keep things in. So
yeah,
you know, and I love to talk. You know, obviously. But, you know, I'm of the mind it's like if there was an issue and all of a sudden I'm being cool with you and maybe we never talked about it, but it's like, you know, I'm backing you, I'm agreeing with you on stuff. Like, to me, that's like my shitty way of like apologizing. You know, it's like, hey, you know, I'm cool with you. You know, I'm giving you a back rub now. Look. Like,
well, but you know what, though?
The fight's over.
You know what? And there is one other topic that I want to get to before we call it curtains with everything today, because I know it's getting late for Jeroen.
Actually, I had an interesting topic I thought we might discuss. I'm not sure if
Okay.
anyone would agree, but I think
Yeah,
it might
let's-
be interesting to discuss the advances of the technology that has been driving some of the modding that has happened over the last decade or so. I mean, 1.5 decades, I suppose. The rise of Git. Git existed before, I think, modding, but nobody used it. It is heavily, extensively used now, and I would never ever do any project without Git ever. There is three newer versions of 3ds. There's Blender now with ALO importer. There is Substance Painter for textures, which is absolutely a godsend. And I'm interested to hear what you guys think the role of some new tech that is advancing, such as maybe the AI generation, stuff like Stable Diffusion now has Photoshop plugins, which is insane. How that might affect modding in the next, say, maybe 5 or so years.
Well, I'm still using Max 9, right?
I switched to Blender.
I am
You
too.
will-
There's nothing wrong with it.
I was thinking like, oh fuck Blender, but like when I switched to Blender, it made it so much easier. The Max 9 plugin is terrible. The UI, you end up with so many issues with Windows. I don't know if you guys have the thing where the display will freeze and you'll get like a little square of what you were doing 5 minutes ago that won't go away.
Yeah, it's
No,
a graph-
you know what the dumb fucking issue is there? You know what the solution is? You copy the .exe and you launch the copy version.
No, but the
That's the
solution is you install Blender
So
is
dumb.
really the
well,
That's
actually,
and it's free too. Like the best thing about it is we've been able to get so many new people helping and so many people within the team that are able to do new stuff at some level just because there's like the Blender is free and we can all use the same file format. It's so easy.
Is it
Yeah.
really
There's
worth
no reason.
relearning the UI?
Yes,
I-
absolutely. I'm telling you, yes.
the only
will-
problem with that,
I
there-
might
there is
need to
one-
consider it.
well, so Geronimo is, I understand where he's coming from, and there is one thing to consider. Like Blender is really not taken that seriously when it comes to like production, professional level stuff, right? I mean, if you're going to move into the gaming industry or the movie industry or any, any industry
That's changed over
utilizing-
the last 5 years.
well,
Blender
I've
is
heard-
used a lot more.
so, on some of the smaller side things, but like these big, like I assure you, EA is not using Blender.
No.
Okay, I mean, these LucasArts and Disney are not using Blender. They're just not, right?
EA is using Excel for spreadsheets for profit. That's
Well,
what
that's,
EA is using.
That's a whole nother story. But the point is that a lot of people that they learn these tools because they actually want to get into, like, this is their career that they want to jump into, and you're gonna have like a subset of people that it's like, this is a hobby, I don't mind using Blender, I'm going to use Blender. And then you have people that are hardcore, I want to use Max because, this is the path I want to go with my whatever. I'm just using Max 9 because I'm so set in my ways that I don't want to learn Blender. I just don't. I've used it a couple of times and I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, it's like, I'm immutable when it comes to changing that. I just won't. But I did move on to Substance Painter. I'm still using Photoshop, obviously, CS5, but Substance Painter I've just jumped into just recently, and I'm still learning, but I love it. I think it's great.
It is amazing, dude. The generators allow you to do things in minutes that would have taken so long
Oh my-
on manual painting in Photoshop.
Oh my god, like
Yeah.
the effects alone, like adding like bullet holes and things, it's like instantaneous, and like I'm like, oh my god, I don't need to do like dodge and burn anymore and like sit there.
I
and do all
know the
these-
fucking program does it for you. We have a Substance Painter guru on our team called Karak, and he makes the most amazing things you've ever
Alright.
seen. Like textures that is just, and it takes no time, and you can transfer it between ships. The
That's
materials.
not,
It's
I may have to
it's
pick his
incredible.
brain just because I'm still learning. So like I'm just experimenting right now, like messing around.
oh, he's
and I'm
really
just-
good. Highly
Oh
recommend talking
yeah.
to him.
But I'm glad I spent the money on that. I really am. Like this seems like something really, like huge, right? As far as Git and all that stuff, you're right. I mean, I couldn't possibly. There's no way we could continue doing some big project without it. Not to mention, like, I mean, Discord itself is a very much better way of communicating than how things.
Oh yeah,
used to
on
be.
Skype.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Skype
yeah.
and,
You
like,
came from
MSN.
MSN.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
jeez.
It's, I mean, at least now it's like you can disseminate a lot of information very rapidly to a lot of people. I like that. Whereas before, It was all one-on-one, like, oh yeah, here, do this, or, go tell this person that. And you have no idea if that even got through.
And Discord, allows you to just construct so many more like communities and different server channels all within the same community. You don't have to have 1,000 different separate Skype group chats for the most minute things. Everything like if we go to the remake server right now, there's like 1,000 different channels for a variety of different things, but it's all in one spot and it's seamless. It's instant. You can transfer between them with no problem whatsoever.
I know, I'm not sure what you wanted to touch on at the very end, Jay, but are we all like, come on, can I not tell the catfish story? Can I not?
Okay.
I want to talk about AI generation, but I'm interested. What is the catfish story?
Okay, so wait. Just a heads up, we are reaching an hour and 20-minute mark, so we're going to finish this off with two subjects that I've really wanted to discuss. We'll finish this off. The final subject will be the catfish story. But one thing that was brought to my attention before was development hell. Now, I know we've talked a little bit about development, but yes. I would love to talk a little bit briefly, just some of the chaotic bits that come with development hell. You can all share your, individual tidbits in this, like some of the most just insane things you've had to deal with when developing some of these incredible projects.
I'll go last because I need to organize my thoughts on that one.
All right, Corey, Z3R0X, let's play a game of rock, paper, scissors. Which one of you wants to go first?
You know what? Let Corey take this one. I actually, I'm curious what he has to say, actually. So, yeah.
I mean, I think over the years, we've gotten better at trying to figure out where to cut off scope creep per release to, like, at least get something done. Kind of the whole don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good situation. Because, like, you'll get so much feedback in the first month after release that would cover a year worth of you just sitting there privately testing stuff. So we're kind of okay on that front. But, like, the biggest thing that's been a problem in recent years has been there was a couple releases ago, a bunch of save issues started coming up for basically every mod simultaneously, and none of us could really figure out what to do about it. And it was ultimately one of the petroglyph patches that had to fix the issue, which is the main one that makes it difficult if you want to do like GOG and disk version support, and why like most people are only able to put stuff out for Steam because of the memory limit. And like I was doing just whatever I could think of to reduce the save size because we didn't know exactly what the issue was. So I was like putting a button on the UI that would let you turn off, like it would just dump all the AI data because we thought maybe that was part of it. And it was like, you'd load up the game, then you'd press another button and that would turn on all the scripts again. It was like 6 months of just trying random crap to make the game load a save after week 3. And that's when Petroglyph put out the patch that made saves take an hour for some people that only just got reversed a year ago. But yeah, a few months ago. That's the biggest thing, where you run into an unknown technical limitation of Empire at War that has no explanation and no hope of fixing it.
That save patch, by the way. Just shout out to Petroglyph for that patch in particular. That has made so many of my playthroughs so much easier. Not having to sit for 5 minutes on a save.
Brought out. Sorry.
Oh yeah, really, Petroglyph, 17 years later, still supporting this game. Like, shout out to that. You don't get that too much in modern gaming, So,
no, and it's especially great because it's only like 1 or 2 people actually doing it in their off time. It's really incredible.
Speaking of which,
very happy they're still doing it.
Yeah, and I would love to, honestly, me and Carrick have briefly discussed it before, and then we're going to continue on with the subject, but I would love to get some of those guys on the podcast one day and just kind of pick their brain about it, get a couple of you guys in here and just talk to them about some stuff, but
I would love that. I'd love to thank them for the time that they spent supporting the mod post-release, the game post-release in person, if possible, via voice, if possible.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Better than just a message.
When we released Raw, I cannot remember. Like, unfortunately, I lost access to one of the emails.
Never just release Raw, man. Don't you know?
No. It was a long time ago. But when it came out, I remember. Now the emails that I had on this one account, I can't find anymore. Like, they're just gone. But I do remember we actually got an email from a PG dev. I can't remember the guy's name now, but he actually told us that, like they'd been rooting for us, like and that it basically said something like, they wish that they wish they could have given us more, right? But they were unable to do so because of like contracts and agreements, which if I understood that correctly, I took it to be that unfortunately LucasArts was just not going to let them release more advanced mod tools, right? Or it was under their directive that why the engine was so locked down the way that it was. And I've come to realize over the years from talking with like multiple people about this that were pretty well placed in that decision-making process, that the reason the engine was locked down the way that it was that, LucasArts and Disney have always been kind of like, very protective of their IP. And I get that. There was concern that the engine would be used to further other IP, right? Like Star Trek or something like that. And they didn't want that. So they were hoping that by keeping it locked down, that it would be close to Star Wars and LucasArts and not being utilized for something else. I don't know if that's true or not, but it actually makes sense. But as for, one of the big things that you learn when you develop stuff, Jay, one of the things that, like, this is a prime example, right? When we released all of our stuff and we put out the AI, right? We had no idea that by placing the AI folders in the mod's main directory, that it would essentially cause every other mod that was in somebody's mod folder to stop working properly. One, we had no, like, yeah, we had no idea.
That sounds like
right?
You get a lot of comments for that.
We had no idea, right? And then essentially it came down to, like, and this is going to sound totally just like straight up arrogant or possibly just dumb, but it was like, we never really thought that people would be playing other mods. Like, we were just like.
So I actually talked to you about this once. I don't know if you remember this.
I vaguely remember Corey coming to me at some point and explaining this, right? And I remember thinking to myself, this doesn't even make any sense. Like,
yeah.
What he's saying makes no sense. And I remember like not understanding. Remember, most of the AI was coded by Sidious, right? And I mean, I did some, and but most of it was him. And I remember we just did not know that you could, like, we didn't know that you could put it into those meg files like the way that it is. We thought we could just put it in the main directory. And I do know that Corey and some other mods took some crap over that because essentially their fans were blaming them for breaking stuff when it was really our fault. But
yeah.
it was never intentional. I remember there were people actually accusing us of doing it intentionally, and it's like, dude, no, it's just, look, the blonde in me was like, like, we never asked our testers, oh, hey, by the way, while you're testing our mod, can you please go test Thrawn's Revenge and make sure that it works properly? Like, we didn't even think about that. And it wasn't until months later that all this stuff started happening. We were like, uh-oh, like, holy crap. Yeah. So, and that caused a bit of a shitstorm. And I apologize. Like, I know Corey probably took some shit from his fans. Like, because I saw some of the messages, like, on his mod DB. People are like, ugh! And it turns out it's our fault. It really is our fault. So, and I think publicly I told a few fans that, like, had cross-posted, like on our thing and theirs, like, privately. Like, I was like, hey, it's really not their fault. It's our fault. So, eventually it got rectified, but yeah, that was a problem. But but what I mean, like, you learn over time things that you didn't know, and now you know.
Yep. Yeah,
I'm just imagining the Steam comment section if we did something like that. I mean, oh my god, the people that be coming up with pitchforks, man.
There was a period, Xerox, where you didn't quite understand how the AI worked. So your initial response to me was actually, well, it'll work better for you too, anyways.
I think I do. Like, I think I do remember that. I remember, like, you
quality. Like,
I think I said something like, yeah, it was like, yeah, well, you guys don't have any AI mods, so you should be happy that we did this for you. And like, it was just one of those things where it's like, and Corey, I apologize, man. I mean, look, when you've got, sometimes, you get caught up in your own ego as well, right? I mean, it's like, I'm talking about me. When you're
You don't want to
When
be
you
told
got
you're the
people,
problem.
dude, when you've got people whispering in your ear every day that you're the greatest, and then somebody comes to you that's respected in the hobby and the community and tells you that there's a problem, with this and that, you may not be so quick to actually accept that information readily. Like you're more like, well, you're wrong. And it wasn't necessarily that I didn't know how the AI worked. It's more of like I did not believe that the placement of those files where they were actually was causing those problems, right? Like, and it was just like there was a disconnect there. Now I get it. I mean, even after he and I talked, I remember like going back and forth with Sidious on this, and it's like, holy shit, he's right. He's right, So,
Yeah, I think there was a long time where Bob and Phoenix Rising were the only ones that knew that most of the files would. So if you just modified AI files and put them in your mod folder, the game wouldn't load them. If you had them in Meg files, most of them they would load, and I think there were some that they wouldn't. But Petroglyph fixed that with some of the patches. I think Bob was the only person with Phoenix Rising that knew if you put them in the Meg that would work, so they did it. But our solution was just not touching the AI. And I think Republic at War and AOTR both did like installation to the main data folder because that would overwrite the base game stuff, which also just meant if other mods were running, then those mods wouldn't work, but yours would. So the complaints go somewhere else.
Look, I'm gonna say that unfortunately Petroglyph, how they designed some of this stuff, they really screwed up, right? I mean, you have a...
yeah, it definitely makes no sense. I'm not saying that's your fault.
Yeah, I mean, take the editor, for example, right? This is a powerful tool, but then they strip out some important things that we need, like the animation options and tracks, right? That was stripped out for whatever reason. Then you have a situation where you can't even use the editor properly unless you move all of your files that you've modified into the game's main directory so the editor can actually access those. So you
can
have to do go ahead.
Sorry, can I just make an honorable mention about the particle editor from Mike NL that renders all of the emitters backwards from how the game actually loads them? That has caused one of the most prolific particle editors and one of the best guys I've ever seen make particles, Megabalta or Daniel, to just quit because he was so frustrated he could not get his particles that he made in the particle editor, and he made some complex shit with custom textures and everything, like up to like 30, 40, 50 emitters, and it all just rendered backwards in the game on the load order of the emitters, and he quit modding over that.
I mean, but think about it though, right? That particle editor, like that was created for free by Mike NL, right? We wouldn't even have a particle editor if it wasn't for him, and yet that kind of like.
Oh, I'm not trying to blame Mike for it.
No, not at all. I know, but PG didn't even give us that, right? Like, there's no. I mean, a lot of these tools were made, like the Allo Viewer, the Meg editor, the MTD editor, the SFX generator, the particle editor, all of those were created by Mike, and there is a need for every one of those tools, right? Every single one. I mean, even I created a tool way back. I made my planet position plotter that was able to so you could at least set up these galaxies with relative ease versus the shit show that it is trying to position 75 or 80 planets from scratch. That's a pain in the butt.
Code.
Yeah. So
yeah, and it's interesting. You just saying that makes me realize just if even if just one of these tools, say the Meg editor for the AI files you just mentioned, if any of those were lacking, I mean, the Empire War community would be like severely hamstrung.
It would. Somebody else would have had to create those files. And I'm saying right now, I have never seen anyone in this community, I think, that was at the level Mike was as far as like understanding this game's engine and being able to do things with it that he did. And that's not a dig on anybody else. It's just this guy was like just amazing with his skills and his knowledge. And he did work with a lot of the PG devs on the side to helping him. He told me that in his interview, by the way, like he was able to get them to give him things, which was just like, wow, that's cool. But, if you take away a few of these tools, like take away the Allo Viewer, right? I mean, I think somebody could have made
Empire War community.
Oh, well, somebody could have made one. I mean, there's always been tools created by the community for other games too, but
yeah, but
nowadays,
not that prolific, not that prominent, right? Nothing that's used that widely by everyone.
Nowadays, though, that's really not the case, right? I mean, look at Dice, right? I mean, their Frosty tools, like that's, I know some of that was fan made, isn't it? Like some of it's fan made and some of it's like released by, like, I think EA released some of it, I think, but nobody's out there making a lot of this stuff. So I just I feel bad that Mega Baltex ran. He got upset with that particle editor thing. I think that's been frustrating for a lot of people. Mike tried to fix it, I think, at one point, but it's
he actually did. It didn't work, but he did try, and I'll always appreciate that.
Yeah. So I just I am eternally grateful to that guy for the contributions that he made to everybody. And like, if you look at the tools he's done, it's insane what he has released. Everything that can be edited and changed, we have the ability to do. I mean, crap, he even put out a Lua decompiler too.
Wait, did it just cut out?
Oh,
Think
I'm
so.
good.
No, okay.
No, I think everyone is just.
That was just the awkward silence. We were listening to the presence of the almighty Z3R0X just do his thing. So, yeah.
No. Look, I
think we're all hailing Mike and Elle for enabling us to do what we've been enjoying for a very long time.
That's true.
At least that's what I was doing.
And by the way, Mike he is a chill guy also. I know I've said that a couple times about people, but he really is. He's a very laid back, just humble guy. So.
She's still alive.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
Well, buy him a beer from me, if you will.
He's he's from your area, Geronimo. I mean, he's like somewhere over there.
I know. I think he's from the Netherlands, actually. That's why the NL is behind his name.
He's a PhD now, and I know he teaches at a university there. Like he's a professor.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That's really fucking cool. Do you have any idea which province?
I think it's whatever.
Do we want to dox him here, or do we want to hold on?
No.
Oh, right. Yeah, now let's not do that.
He told me the name of the college, and I remember hearing it, and I was like, well, that's a pretty big, like, I think it's like your main, like, the biggest one you guys have, whatever that may be. I think he's there.
Well, we got a couple, but...
Yeah.
Well, we have a very major one in the town right next to me, so...
I'll,
I'd love to one day walk up to the guy with a coffee and be like, hey, dude, I'm from the Modern community. Thanks for all the shit you did. I mean, it might be a little scary for him.
That's creepy.
Yeah, maybe that is creepy. Maybe I shouldn't do that.
Hi, Mike. I just wanted to thank you.
Hey, man, I think you're kind of cool. You want to go get lunch later? Hang out? Who the fuck is this guy?
Maybe that's dumb.
That would
warn
be
him
creepy.
beforehand.
Like, I mean, I've run into fans before publicly, like, but they don't know me, right? Like, until we start talking, and then it kind of turns into this, holy crap, like, you did this?
Oh, yeah, like, that's how you got back into the community.
Wait, I know how that conversation goes. Does it go like, hey, I'm Z3R0X. Sorry, who?
Yeah, that's the, but that's actually happened to me a couple of times with fans, right? But it happened recently enough to where I was like, wow, like, it caused me to, like, take a step back, but... I think walking up to somebody and being like, hi, you're so-and-so, and that'd just be like, oh, that'd be cringe, right? Like, hey, Corey. Like, I'm standing outside the house.
Hey, Corey.
Hey, what's
Happened yet.
No,
No, hasn't happened yet with me either. That would be fucked up, though. Never mind. I'm not going to do that Mike thing. That is fucked up now that I think about it.
If you mention it beforehand, then that's fine. But if you
it's
just
a lot less creepy.
if you're walking up with your phone, you've got like his face on it, and then like look down, look up. Okay, it's you. That's when Interpol gets involved.
Yeah, and you've got like
restraining orders.
And you've got flowers and a 6-pack in your hands. It's like, hey, look, I got you.
Yeah,
oh, man. All right, so... I wanted to touch really quick. Jeroen, I think you basically kind of gave your thoughts on development hell pretty much, but was there anything else you wanted to add to that before we
I didn't say a goddamn thing.
Oh, you did it.
That's
okay.
all right. We can skip it if you like.
I mean, no, feel free. Throw your 2 cents into that area. What's your...
I'm sorry. No, I stepped out to go to the bathroom. I actually typed that. I'm like, let Jeroen go. I got to go to the bathroom.
Oh, yeah, we got a little sidetracked. We got a little sidetracked.
All right, so long story short, this is the summary of how it goes, and it was a true shit show for like some 2 or so. I feel like it was almost 2 years. I mean, it felt like 5, but it was probably 2. So we never really worked with a very major team. It's mostly been me and 1 or 2 other people. Then at one point, someone left, and I decided basically that we should really have a larger group of people. We have very talented people in our community. We actually have the talent in this community. I was streaming at the time, and there were several individuals on our Discord server that were clearly capable of modding Empire at War. So yeah, some people were invited on, some people declined, some people got on, and I was basically like, you guys have clearly shown that you're capable of doing a lot of good stuff. I'm going to give you a lot of control in your specific areas. I'm not going to like lord over you. Like, you don't need to run every decision by me. Like, do what you do best, design good stuff and execute on it. And some people were capable of doing that, some people weren't. The people that were capable of doing that stayed on and took over a lot of responsibility on certain parts of our mod, because it's always been a 2 or so man project. So it's only really been Space Skirmish, Space and Galactic Conquest, and then just Galactic Conquest. We cut out ground entirely at one point because we just didn't have the manpower to develop it. And so when we had this team together, we had like some 6 or so people that were really committed and actually capable of making it happen. We had someone for audio, we had someone for ground, we had someone for space, we had someone for galactic, we had and people that in between do things. And it worked together really well. And over the course of some 2 or so years, we basically we uprooted everything we had, and we were like, we're gonna build an actual proper mod now. We're gonna make ground combat, we're gonna make a competence system, we're gonna have people that are very like into World War II and shit, and they're gonna design Kassaran is that. He's gonna design this complicated like armor system and such. He's really into this. He's really committed. He's really focused. Clearly capable of executing on the vision that he has, and he's gonna do that. And we had like someone for like every little bit, and gave them a lot of freedom to do what they needed to do. And so for like some 2 or so years, 2 very very long years, the mod was completely unplayable. You couldn't play a goddamn thing. There was no skirmish. You could play nothing. It was just the design and the work, and everyone hoping that everybody else would stay on and stay committed. And there were some very tough moments when some people were either getting tired of the development, and they were like, oh my god, I hope this ends quickly. Like we didn't even have a mod to play, but we knew what the end goal was. We knew the plan. We all agreed that it was the way forward. Everyone had the freedom in their respective areas to do what they needed to do. I picked specifically people that were capable of forming a vision of what they wanted their specific areas to be. And they eventually were all able to execute on that, and it was amazing. When it eventually came together, about a month into this fucking 2-year development cycle hell, and it truly was hell, because again, you know, you're just hoping it works. We uprooted the entire AI. Nobody had experience with AI. The one guy that did MWI and Burning both, actually, they both did an amazing job of slapping all this together, and they couldn't even really test things necessarily, but they somehow made it work. So you got all this work coming together towards the end of this giant 2-year development hell cycle where everybody was working, but it was very tough. Motivation issues and all that. Thank God everybody stayed committed. If some people fell away halfway through, that would have been a disaster. And at the end of this 2-year development cycle, my father had a heart attack, and I had to step away completely, and I had to go manage our meal company for elderly folks, and I couldn't be anywhere. Like that is a 7-day a week job, and the rest of the team had to pull our 4.0 release. This is at this point like a year, 1.5 years ago. They had to pull 4.0, the massive 4.0 release that we had scheduled for the first time, with ground combat, integrated AI, lander, space combat, skirmish, all of this shit that we had planned and worked towards for so long. They had to pull this across the finish line, and I felt so terrible having to just leave them to it and be like, I'm sorry guys, but I literally cannot right now do anything. You have to do this. I'm so sorry. And they fucking did it. That's my development hell story. They pulled 4.0 across the finish line, and it was a goddamn miracle, and I was so fucking proud of them.
Well, honestly, and you know what?
Sorry.
No, you're
Maybe
fine.
a
I
little
mean,
anticlimactic, but
to be
Man,
perfectly fair,
that was intense.
it's a good thing to bring to the light because obviously there are a lot of people out there that like to criticize things like, hey, why is this not in the mod, or hey, why is this not happening, and that's just a universal thing for whether it's EA Empire War X or Republic at War or remake. It's a universal thing. People are always going to question, hey, why is X thing not in this, or hey, why is this incomplete, or blah blah blah. But they don't really know kind of what's going on behind the scenes, and I'm sure you wouldn't want to personally disclose to every single person that comes in and asks what's going on. You don't want to disclose them that kind of personal information constantly. So I mean, you can call it anticlimactic, but it's a good thing to point out so people can kind of hopefully get a grasp and understand, like, hey, we all are still people, or you guys are all still people at the end of the day. We all have something kind of going on in our own livelihoods. And as much as you all are dedicated to what you do, here it's all clearly a passion project. You're still human. You still have things going on. You can't make everything as perfect as you want to at when you want to. It's just impossible. Like, we all have personal lives, and that's something a lot of people got to respect at the end of the day. So it's a good thing that you brought it up the way you did. So I commend you for it. Like, that's
it's definitely true, and it's just like, I want to say again, very very briefly, just to credit my the people I work with, the team. It's been an incredible experience, and they know what they were signing up for at the time. I told them we want to make something real. We're bringing a group of people together, and this is going to be a long stint of time. It's going to be a lot of freedom, so if you want to be on this, then that's fine, but it will be tough.
Yep.
But yeah, just having to step away from that for that last month after some 2 or so years, that was difficult. But it was very good to see that sort of the validation of the proof is in the pudding. Like, the people are in fact amazing. They can in fact independently do all this work.
Yep.
And they can pull the mod release across the finish line, and that was just amazing to see.
Yep. And it goes to show a good team makes anything possible, right? A really good team
Absolutely.
can make pretty much anything possible. Yep.
And by the way, just kudos to you, Jeroen, to that you stepped up like that. To take on your family business like that. That's great, man. I love hearing stuff like that. Because so many people nowadays, unfortunately, it might be a values difference there, but quite a few people wouldn't do that. They just carry on with their lives and just kind of hey, that's not my problem, even though it's family. So good for you, man.
Yeah.
Thank
round
you,
of
dude.
applause.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Wasn't easy, but when life gives you lemons, you try to make lemonade, or you die trying, I guess.
It's
my philosophy anyway.
I'm a firm believer in like family and stuff too, and I just to me that's important.
He's like Dom Toretto from the Fast and Furious movies. he just believes in family.
We got family.
We have family.
Look,
That's right.
I live my life 1/4 mile at a time. All right.
There you go.
All right.
So, I wanna close off things in a bit here soon because we're actually approaching the potential 2-hour mark, which is actually kind of crazy. I originally theorized we'd probably only be here for an hour, but we're actually about 13 minutes away from 2 hours, and it doesn't even feel like it really.
Still feels short. I feel like with so many storied people there's still interesting stories to tell.
Well, I can tell that for a fact that once this gets published and we share it everywhere, I hope you guys share it everywhere anyway. More people are probably going to want to hear more stories. So, we'll definitely probably reconvene again for one of these. But
I'd be up for round 2 if you guys are.
Yeah. I had a good time.
Look, I haven't been able to talk to, honestly, Corey, seriously, when's the last time, I think the last time you messaged me was about porn on the, on the website. So, and that would have been like, I don't know, late 2012, I think around there was like, dude, there's too much porn, help me. Like, so it's been a minute.
What do I do with all this porn?
I know, he's like, there's so much porn, I can't take it. Like, I haven't had a chance to really, like, talk
I'm taking a pounding over here.
Oh my god.
I mean, dude, like I actually messaged Corey like one of the first days I got back, and I was like, "Hey," and I was expecting more of like a hug, but instead I got this hi. Like, I'm like, oh. It's like, "Hey, man, I'm sorry I dumped all the porn on you and left you kind of hanging out there, but hey, what's up, man?"
With Bad Batch
sorry,
on
I dumped all
now
that porn
in Mando coming out, I've been in like nonstop work mode for the last month and
There you
a
go.
half.
Yeah, there you go. I've been brushing up too a little bit, trying to catch up on some of that. So no spoilers on the Bad Batch. All right, I'm like 3 episodes behind.
Before we talk about the catfish story, I also just remember Corey actually has a 4th mod he's working on. They're working on another like Galactic Civil War like interim kind of mod, like between.
That one's more me just on my own picking away at random crap that I think might be fun to try.
Yeah,
but eventually, and really that's 5 because we got the Sins as well. So
5, yeah, that's true. And then if we ever step into Stellaris, maybe that'll be 6.
No, that was 3, and then we went back on that one.
Yeah.
You've got to be reasonable with these things.
Yeah, I can't imagine the amount of work that goes into
You said something earlier, though, about... Sorry, Jay, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I wasn't going to add anything of value. Please, continue.
I was gonna ask. I mean, you brought up such a valid point. I mean, there's like when you start Empire War modding, and this is something we talk about in the team a lot, especially with Kazaran, our ground guy. Empire War. He just came back from a trip in Japan. He was there for a week. He had a vacation. What did he do all vacation? He was on his laptop. He was joining in live streams. He was doing code changes, and he was being part of the Discord server and helping troubleshoot shit. And he basically had no vacation from Empire War. Once it digs its claws in, it's like you're an Empire War man now forever.
Yep.
And you brought up a good point earlier, which is like, what do you do when the mods are completed and Empire War is finished? Where do you go from there?
Well, it's funny you say that.
I haven't figured it out myself.
It's funny you say that because from a content creator's perspective, which is, as we all know, I do YouTube. I actually have 2 YouTube channels now. One for my main one being primarily Empire War stuff and some variety here and there. And then I have another one that I actually do purely Call of Duty content because I'm heavily involved with the Call of Duty community, like on a grand scale. I go to events, I record things at events, I'm in teams. But anytime I've deviated really away from Empire War on my channel, those videos do absolutely terrible every single time.
Empire War is a virus, you gotta use it.
Pretty much, yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
And,
I agree with that.
It's a pain. Luckily, the Elden Ring videos I've been posting have actually been doing pretty damn good. But outside of that, no, nothing else on my channel really ever peaks like Empire War content does. And I actually had to put a community post out recently, like, hey, I've just been really busy with life. I don't think I can really, put as much effort as I want to into these long-term 50-episode Galactic Conquest playthroughs that I've historically done on the channel. It's just far too much for my time right now. But
Yeah,
man. So we are 8 minutes away from the 2-hour mark.
The catfish story was too heavy for this podcast.
Yeah,
it could not survive.
So
Jeroen
all right,
just likes fishing.
yeah. So
Z3R0X just went out fishing, caught a giant catfish, and that was it. Sorry,
it
boys.
was,
End the story. Goodbye.
yeah,
That's all, folks.
and
so
it lasts for 250.
So, all right, guys. So, really quick for the people that are watching this, with how far we're getting into this podcast, we're going to save the catfishing story for probably another day. It's a very lengthy, detailed, and honestly kind of fucked up story that it's going to be a bit of a sensitive topic to kind of cover. So, all 4 of us have mutually agreed that we'll save this for another discussion. And again, we are hitting the 2-hour plus mark at this point. So, it's definitely been it's been an enjoyable experience to say the least, guys, and I'm glad I've got all 3 of you on here to have this discussion. Crazy enough, a lot of people were skeptical and didn't think that this discussion would go, rather smoothly. And I feel like this is just a great example of showing that we've all grown up, or everybody's grown up a bit. Nothing's really personal anymore for the most part, and we've all just kind of moved on. No names will be dropped, but moving forward, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming here and sharing your stories. We're going to do more of these in the foreseeable future, if you guys are willing anyway. Or just share more stories, because, we've got a game with 17...
Me too.
Yeah, we've got a game with 17 years of experience to cover. So there's a lot to talk about, man. And yeah, I thought this was an enjoyable experience, and I hope the people that are going to watch this had a good time as well. And yeah, again, thank you all for being here, and we'll see you all next time. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel. Check out every single one of these guys' Discords for their individual mods. I'll leave them in the description below. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. I say this at the end of every one of my videos, so if it's a little cringe, I'm sorry. But may the force be with you all. I'll see you guys later. Peace. And if you guys want to say goodbye, go for it.
Goodbye, everybody, and hopefully you'll hear more of Corey and Z3R0X
Z3R0X
story time. Right.
Nice.
Thank you, guys.